So, have you ever been on a website like Facebook or Netflix and just wondered, how does this feel so fast and so alive? Well, a huge part of that magic is a tool called React. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and explain how React helps build the modern web, basically piece by piece. But, to really get the solution, we first have to understand the problem. Why are modern websites so ridiculously hard to build sometimes?
Okay, so let's get into the problem first. Look, building a simple web page, that's one thing, but building a modern, interactive web application, well, that's a whole different beast. It's kind of like trying to navigate a jungle of user clicks, data updates, and visual changes all happening at the exact same time. And really, it all comes down to this. As our websites get more and more complex, the data they have to manage gets way more complex too. Just think about your social media feed for a second. You've got likes, comments, new posts loading in, notifications popping up. It's a lot. In the olden days, developers had to manually keep track of every single one of those changes, which, trust me, was super messy and a total nightmare for bugs.
And that's exactly where React comes into the picture. It was created by the team at Facebook, and it's a JavaScript library built specifically to tame all of this chaos and make building these huge interactive websites a whole lot simpler. At its very core, React's main job is to handle the view part of an app. What does that mean? It means it's only worried about what you, the user, actually see on the screen and interact with. It doesn't care about the database or the server stuff. Its whole focus is on building a fast and super responsive user interface. Now, here is React's secret weapon, something called the virtual DOM. See, instead of changing the actual web page directly, which is a surprisingly slow process, React first makes changes to a lightweight copy of it that lives in memory. Then it cleverly compares this virtual copy to the real screen, figures out the absolute smallest possible change it needs to make, and updates only that one tiny part. This efficiency is what makes React apps feel so incredibly snappy.
Okay, so how does this actually work in practice? Well, the absolute best way to think about it is like you're building with digital Legos. Every single piece of a website is its own separate block that you just snap together with other blocks. This quote just nails the core idea. Everything, and I mean everything in React is a component. So what's a component? It's just a reusable, self-contained piece of your user interface. A button? That can be a component. A search bar? Yep, a component. A user profile card? You guessed it, another component. You build all these small, independent pieces first, and then you assemble them to create your entire website.
Let's make this a little more real. Here's a pretty typical timeline view, just like what you'd see on any social media app. At first glance, it looks like one big, complicated thing, right? But with React, it's really not.
When you look at this through the eyes of React, you start to see that it's actually just made up of smaller, nested components. You've got a header component right at the top. Then there's a content component that holds the whole feed. And inside that, each individual post is its very own activity item component. By breaking it down like this, a huge, intimidating interface suddenly becomes simple and totally manageable. Okay, so when developers are actually writing these components, they use this special syntax called JSX. And the cool thing is, at first glance, it looks almost exactly like the HTML we all know for structuring web pages. This makes it feel super intuitive and really easy to read.
But here's the really clever part. Even though you're writing something that looks like HTML, it all gets translated behind the scenes into pure JavaScript. This gives you the best of both worlds, the simple, readable structure of HTML combined with the full power and logic of JavaScript, all in the same place.
Okay, so we have our Lego bricks, our components. Awesome. But how do we get them to actually do things? How do we get data into them and make them interactive?
Well, the first way is with something called props. Props are how a parent component passes data down to its children. You can basically think of them as instructions for your Lego brick, telling it exactly what it needs to display or how to behave.
For instance, our main app component can tell the header component what title to show by passing it a title prop, just like this. The process is actually really similar to just setting an attribute on a regular old HTML tag. And then inside that header component, it can just read that instruction. So whatever title we passed in is exactly what will get displayed on the screen. It's a really simple system, and it's what makes our components so reusable and dynamic.
But what about data that changes because a user did something, like they clicked a button or typed in a search box? For that, we have state.
State is basically a component's own private internal memory. It's for keeping track of things that can change over time, like the text being typed into an input field or whether a menu is open or closed.
So to put it really simply, props are data passed in from a parent, and they are read-only, you can't change them. State is data that's managed inside the component itself, and it can be changed. Honestly, getting this distinction right is probably the biggest key to mastering React.
And you know what? That's really the core of it. We've just covered the fundamental building blocks you need to understand how React works. So let's just do a quick recap. You build your user interface from small, reusable components, our Legos. You pass data into them from above using props. You manage all the internal, interactive data using state. And you write it all using JSX, which gives you that awesome combo of HTML and JavaScript.
At the end of the day, React isn't some kind of magic. It's just a really smart, organized, and efficient system for building modern websites. It takes the total chaos of a complex UI and gives developers a simple, powerful set of tools, these digital Legos, to build with.
By thinking in terms of components, props, and state, developers can build some absolutely amazing, fast, and scalable applications. You've now seen the fundamental pieces. So the only question left is, what will you build with them first?